well spelled out, especially once a candidate registers. The candidate is given the rules, but if you want to know ahead of time, go back there and ask Heather. Heather Brown has all the rules and regs. But that's an excellent point, because people might get kind of enthusiastic and learn the rules too late.
Page 13 of the candidate's guide.
Okay.
For every municipality in Ontario, make sure you read it.
Page 13, candidate's guide. Okay, right across Ontario. Marguerite?
Just a quick little point. Also, be careful who you get your money from. And what I mean by that is developers, big business. It happens. I mean, sometimes I have received sometimes big checks, but you know what happens? You become beholden. Things come to the council table, various projects, this, that, and that, and the other, and you don't want to be there. You know, so really be careful as to where and who, in a sense, you're asking, because if they give you money and they give you a hefty 50, like $100 or $500, because sometimes I receive those checks. I've actually returned some of them, because all of a sudden you're beholden. From your family and your friends, fine, take it, but don't think about the other.
And every situation is different. When I started out, I fully funded my campaigns. Partly because of what Marguerite just said. I wasn't sure what expectation there'd be then from any donor, who gave to me. And then after, I'm talking about the local experience, after a few elections I realized, hey, there are some companies that give $100, $150, $200 to any candidate that asks. So if you're a candidate locally, you look on the city website, find out what's listed from my campaign, other campaigns, and any checks that we get over $99, we have to list the name of that donor and the amount. So if you're thinking of fundraising, that's one source you can use. Look at your municipality's website and see where candidates in the past got their money. Okay. Looking back, I feel kind of foolish I didn't take some of that money, So there are different ways of looking at it, but you always have to be true, of course, to yourself and your own honesty. Okay. Is that it for now? Oh, sorry, Stella. Yes, yeah.
So
Pull it over.
on events, you did. Melissa touched on the fact that to be careful about events, and so it's just so tempting to hold events rather than just ask for money. It's counterintuitive to simply ask for money because you think you need to give someone value. But if you do have an event, I hold only receptions. Many of my colleagues have golf tournaments and dinners. I don't even have breakfasts. I keep expenses always to less than 10% of the donation amount. So, and then we're talking about different amounts here. So and you're all ready for council, so I won't get into the amounts because it's apples and oranges. But we do keep we do want to make sure that the tax receipt that the donor receives is as high as possible. We have to deduct expenses. So I don't, depending on what your provincial rules are, I don't know if you get tax receipts or not.
We don't.
Oh, okay. Not in Ontario. No tax receipts.
So you can't use it as a tax deduction.
Okay.
If somebody gives you $100, they can't use that.
They can't use that. Okay, that's good. I know in the city of Toronto you can, but I think they're actually municipality specific in some cases.
Yes.
Okay. But
Well, maybe that could be part of your platform.
Well, I don't deal with municipal.
No, I mean the municipal.
Oh, that's right.
Equal access to funds, right?
That's right.
You heard it here first when we come to Ottawa in the fall. As the delegates can count.
What happens when women get together? They have great ideas. Just keep going. I did want to talk about canvassing, if I could go back to one presentation, because I thought that the points that were made were excellent. And if I might just offer a suggestion, I'm just green with envy when I hear the possibility that you might get to every house twice, because I have more than 45,000 households in my riding, and I don't even have a particularly large riding for Greater Toronto area. So I only hit a few thousand in one election cycle. So I start ahead of time, and you know, I might hit 5,000 or 10,000 tops. But so I have other canvassers. But I will say the ask is exceptionally important. And Marguerite, you were talking about how difficult it is to ask for the vote. So I think I found sort of a compromise question between will you vote for me, which is very in your face and direct, and a lot of people find uncomfortable, versus the other extreme, which is I hope to count on your vote, which gets you no useful information, unfortunately. It's easy, and you can say to everyone, gosh, I hope I can count on your vote, but you don't leave that door with any information when you say that. So for me, I'm comfortable with saying to everyone, have you decided yet how you're going to vote? That's what I say at the end of the conversation. Sometimes at the beginning, it really depends, but have you decided yet, or have you given any thought yet to how you might be voting in the upcoming election? I find it softer language, I'm comfortable with it, and it elicits the same answer. It elicits the same answer as, will you vote for me? Just in a slightly more indirect way. I'm more comfortable saying that. And the other thing on canvassing I want to say is, yeah, don't take it personally. I remember one time I got back to the campaign office after a day of canvassing, and my volunteers in the office were all over me, and they said, "Mr. Smith called. You were just at his door." And I said, "Oh, okay." You know, I had been to 100 doors or whatever it was that day, and they said he really wanted to reach you because he felt so badly about the way he treated you at the door. And while I thought that was sweet, I didn't even remember. And it was the same name. So like, you know, so you let it roll off your back, right? And so I just wanted to say it works out much better that way if you just don't take it personally. Some people are going to vote for you, some are not, and that's just the way it's always going to be. And lastly, with regard to bad weather, you get more votes when you canvass in bad weather. So yeah, just trudge through the snow, the sleet, the rain, and the 40 degrees of heat or whatever it is, because people just think it's fantastic that you're doing that. So I would say that. And so if it's really cold, here's my other secret. Wear silk long johns. Who's got silk long johns from LL? I'm in Thunder Bay. What am I talking about? Anyway, llbean.com is where I get mine. They're like $40. They last years, and they're just a fantastic investment for canvassing. Can't beat them.
Okay. Questions on canvassing fundraising?
Yes, I'd like to know for potential candidates in the room, are we able to get contributions from other organizations? Let's say if I approach one in Ottawa, which is in my mind. Yes, you're in there going, who would that be? But
yeah.
There's a couple of them that I'd like to approach.
Heather might know.
And
Heather, you know what, Heather would know that.
Heather would know that.
Heather, there's a question for you.
Sorry.
Can potential candidates canvass outside the city for contribution for their family?
Yes, yeah. The campaign, the contribution guidelines are very detailed in the legislation. So you must be a resident of Ontario in order to be able to contribute. But I think I don't want to speak off the cuff and give bad information, but yes, people outside the municipality can contribute to your campaign as long as they meet the eligible contributor requirements.
Okay.
So if they live in Ontario and they are an eligible contributor, just for the people back home.
More details than that. You're asking me to speak off the
Page
cuff.
13, check it out. Okay. All right, thank you. Just so the people
I
at
just
home
get a
know
couple of
that.
national provincial companies I know. Thank
Okay,
you.
here you go.
Okay, go talk to Heather. That's a great opportunity.
Contributions. Individuals who are normally resident in Ontario, corporations that carry on business in Ontario, trade unions that hold bargaining rights in Ontario, yourself and your spouse.
Okay. So trade unions, corporations that operate in Ontario, you and your son. Okay, Diane.
Okay, I've been told that fundraising events which will give 50% to charities and make sure that it will be clearly stated that it is not only for charity, but also for your campaign. What do you think about it?
I've never done them. Have you, and any of the rest of you? I'm sorry, Diane, check with Heather there, because that's a novel idea, but we don't have that experience to answer you. But Heather, who's chatting with someone else right now, would have that answer. Okay, thank you very much. All right, now we're going to move right along. Rona, regarding communications.
I'll get confused. I'm used to multitasking doing different things. So this has been really great. I've really enjoyed it. So my job here today is to talk about communication. So you've got the slide up there, and I'm going to be speaking. The notes that are provided to me they wouldn't reflect what I would do in my community, because my community is not like your community. So take whatever I'm providing with you and adapt it to work with whatever you feel comfortable with. At the beginning, it's important to designate one person in your campaign to be responsible for media relations. Generally, that person should operate as a spokesperson in addition to you as the candidate. So you want to have a clear, definite person that everybody knows that they can go to, that will be free to speak on your behalf as a candidate. They should issue all the media releases and be the only one authorized to answer questions from journalists. It is essential that all other campaign workers understand and observe this rule. And I would think that, in my experience, if somebody's got some kind of training to be dealing with the media, they would know how to not get trapped by a reporter asking you a trick question. And so it's very important that you follow that rule. You get somebody that's got some skill in avoiding the question or turning the question around so that it benefits you. And if you have no experience doing that, you could get the whole thing into a lot of trouble. The spokesperson must be informed about the progress of the campaign so that the information given to the media is accurate. Very important. And this person is responsible for your public image and should not be replaced from one event to the other. And I think that that's really important too, because you want that person to be as recognizable as yourself, so that the public or the media knows that if you've been at an event, you've made some kind of comment, that the media can go to that person if you're not available. Next slide, please. Okay, the campaign manager and the candidate will define the messaging during the campaign planning process, and then the communications chair is responsible for delivering this message. So you can see up there that there's some things that you should be aware of. You need to be clear and concise. And I would say that you probably need to be prepared for some challenges if you go to all candidates forum. You want to make sure that you've got that messaging clear in your head. You can be involved in listening to a bunch of different discussions. Make sure if you're getting a question or something from somebody, make sure that you understand what the question is. I think that's really important. Okay, next slide, please. The communications plan. When developing a communications plan, it's important to consider the following. Once you've decided what you're communicating and to whom, you're ready to involve media in your plans. So what you're communicating and to whom. And the to whom changes all the time. Collectively, you have a great big group of people that you're representing, but if you're going to, for instance, the seniors' home to talk to people there, what you're going to be talking to them is a little bit different than when you're going to the parent advisory committee at the school and they want to talk about playgrounds or a crosswalk by the school. So make sure that you know who you're going to be talking to. I think that's really important. Next slide, please. Communicating with the voters. A campaign is essentially about communicating. The message communicated by your campaign should be consistent and integrated. To run a professional-looking campaign, put forward a consistent, clean, and simple message. Even the best candidates can't knock on every door and greet every voter in the constituency, so we rely on other methods to reach the voter. the media, campaign literature, and signs. We've talked about all of those here today. Remember that media is only one part of the communications process, even though it seems the most visible and impactful. Many other communications methods are far more local and important, and more important than we realize. All politics is local. A very good rule. Is especially true when it comes to communications in politics. This includes communicating to your volunteers, your financial donors, and community groups, as well as the local media. Next slide, please. Getting out your message. Who? Who are you speaking to? Who do you want to hear this message? In other words, who is your target audience? Internal communications are those aimed at volunteers, campaign workers, donors, and like-minded organizations. External communications are those directed to those who are not identified as supporters and or who are less familiar in the party and its activities. What? What is the core message? What impression do you want to create for your audience? You should be able to summarize the essence of your message in one sentence. Any message should be succinct, direct, and easy to explain. When? When should your campaign release the message? The issue of timing is crucial to any communications process. If the timing is wrong, the issue can be lost, forgotten, or overshadowed by those other issues of the day. And you know, as a local government politician, we see that all the time. You made a decision at your board or council that's hugely important, but something happens and you know it's lost. So communicating anything before an election or after an election is really, really important. Where do you want your message to go? Where will release of the message be the most advantageous? A media conference, a media release, your newsletter, an email announcement, your campaign website, and mail out issue cards. And why? Why is this information important? Why are we doing this? The first question creates a strong message and results in constituency and credibility in the long term. Consistency, pardon me, and credibility in the long term. The second question addresses why the overall communications process is important and how to get your message out. Once an effective message has been created and reviewed, it must be distributed. And I guess I would add something else here too. It might be worth checking into how successful that was. I mean, as a local government politician for a long time, you know, we've tried, you know, putting information in the local newspapers, and because the newspaper is becoming less effective, it doesn't work so well anymore. The radio, you think everybody listens to the radio? Well, not everybody listens to the radio anymore. You think everybody's connected to Facebook or the other kind of technology? It's not that way anymore. You go out to your local post office and where people gather, try and do that. There is so many ways of doing things, and what works well for one group of people doesn't work for another group of people. So it's worth it to touch base to make sure that what you're communicating is actually reaching the people. Because it's a waste of time and a waste of money and energy if whatever you're doing is not getting the message out. Next slide, please. So what kind of name recognitions do you have in the community? How many issues will form the basis for your campaign? What types of campaign materials are commonly used in your area? Can the campaign afford the expense of a direct mail program? What pre-printed office stationery is necessary for the campaign? Are these questions that you've asked yourself? A useful way to develop a literature plan for your campaign is to start on election day and work backwards. Develop a schedule of what you will need and when you will need it. Once a preliminary schedule has been created, prioritize each of the items. What is essential? What would be good to have? What is wishful thinking? Take a look at your campaign budget and decide which items you can afford. Develop your own quantity estimates by using census figures, tax rolls, city directories, and voter registry lists. Throughout the campaign, review your budget to make sure your expenditures are still on target. For your campaign literature options, your campaign will use some of or all of the following communications tools: candidate cards, brochures, issue backgrounders, newsletters, you vote at reminder cards, buttons and stickers, signs, stationery for correspondence and advertising. Other kinds of campaign literature. In addition to the candidate cards, there are many other kinds of campaign literature, depending on your budget, and I would say that that's pretty key. Your campaign literature can include the following. Issue cards and policy backgrounders. This literature should explain your position on current and new campaign issues. Such literature can be targeted to specific neighborhoods or even a single apartment building. Newsletters have photos and short newspaper-like articles. These can be printed at the campaign office using a quality printer. Folded into thirds, they fit into standard envelopes for mailing. And buttons and stickers are useful for identifying campaign volunteers, supporters during canvassing, and they're an affordable way to make people feel part of the team by allowing them to show that they support you, using the same look that was used to design the signs to make the buttons and stickers. And I'll just give you a little piece of advice. If you're going to go and get buttons or stickers or something, don't put anything else on it but vote for whatever your name is, because then you can use them for any election. It doesn't matter, you know. Otherwise, if you're saying vote for school board and then next time you decide you're going to run for council, you'd have to go out and buy yourself some new buttons again. So I bought some of those a long time ago, and I still have some, and I've used them for about 3 different things now. So the lawn signs, the sign strategy. Place a priority on arterial roads before residential neighborhoods. A sign on a bus route or a major highway will be seen by hundreds more people than a lawn sign in a housing subdivision. During the last week of the campaign, try to get as many sign locations as possible in the general area of each polling station. Unlike campaign advertising, campaign sign activity does not have to stop once the polls open. Signs still in the campaign office on election night are useless. It is very important to maintain signs after they are erected. Signs will be lost to weather, vandals, and even to well-meaning supporters who may take it down the sign to cut the grass or to do some yard work. Some signs should be held back to be used just before election day to replace damaged ones. Signs provide a continuous contact for you with voters in a way that is hard to match in other ways. They are visible proof of support and can persuade voters by their very presence. And next slide, advertising. Your advertising should mirror your campaign literature. The candidate card is a good base as it contains all the essential information about you and your platform. In addition to consistent message, make sure you keep the look consistent because it is more professional and creates a brand and identity for you. Repetitive contact. Be strategic in your choices. If you have a limited budget, pick 1 or 2 mediums and dominate in those mediums. The goal is repetitive contact, and dominating a particular medium makes this easier. And that's it for me, but you know, communications is really key. And if you learn how to communicate well when you are campaigning, I think that you will take that forward and be a good communicator throughout your successful term as an elected official.